Good day to you, Guyana, and welcome to another edition of Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you so very much for joining us. Well, let me first apologize for coming on earlier, 10 minutes earlier than usual, and not giving you the heads up. But as you know, we have a sitting of the National Assembly today. There are lots of things going on in this area. Traffic is heavy, extremely heavy as usual, and it's even worse today. And my guest is someone who has been in the public a lot for very good reasons, dealing with developments as it relates to the education sector, and he indeed has another appointment after this. So those of you who are tuned in, we're happy that you've tuned in, and if you know the others who usually tune in at 12:30, you can tell them that we're on. But rest assured also, this program is always on YouTube and on Facebook, of course, following the interviews that we have. Today we're definitely focusing on the education sector in the first half of the program, and it is my pleasure to welcome to this program for the very first time the Chief Education Officer, Mr. Marcel Hutson. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Malika, and thanks for having me
All right.
on this program.
Great, you're so very welcome. And viewers, this conversation comes because, you know, sometimes on Facing the Nation, we would focus on education during the month of education, which would have been September. But officials and so on were busy then, and we did not get a chance to focus on it. But it's never, ever too late. In fact, the development of the education sector in our country is something ongoing, so it's never too late for us to talk education. Mr. Hutson, again, thank you very much for coming. One of the things I want to first start off by talking about is we've seen it in the news between last night and this morning. I think it's the first of its kind of town hall meeting held, of course, with a team from the Ministry of Education. Let's talk about that.
Yes, Malika. The dynamics of education would cause us to move in a particular direction.
Okay.
And when one looks at the importance of parental involvement in education, one recognizes that we need to actually engage our parents on a more consistent basis. And so we have started a series of town hall meetings. Today, one is being held in Essequibo in region number 2. Yesterday we were in region 10, and to a very packed house, and of course persons had a lot of questions to ask. We spoke about parental involvement, how parents could actually impact the performance of their children. We spent some time also talking about issues in relation to child care and protection, and also issues in relation to schools' welfare. So parents were given a wealth of knowledge, information, knowledge, if you will, so that they could be more impacting in terms of the performance of the children. The literature is very clear, Malika, that where parental involvement is strong, our children do much better, and the school system also performs better. So it is very important that we engage our parents, and we're going to be doing this on a consistent basis. We are aware that we have parents that are operating under certain circumstances that may be adverse, and therefore whatever help and assistance we could bring to them, we are willing to do so, because educating children, our children, it is a very complex issue. People, you know, it is easy to say they blame the education system for a whole host of things, but, you know, one researcher said there are 130 something variables that interfere with education delivery, and then the researcher narrowed those 130 something to about 35. So when you're talking about an education system, you have to consider a battery or an array of things. You're talking about parental involvement, you're talking about manpower, you're talking about quality teachers, a whole host of things that you have to consider if you're going to be impacting. And I could tell you, in this dispensation at the Ministry of Education, we are addressing many of these issues for improved performance.
I'm happy that you talked about the whole host of things, the battery of things that you need to focus on when you're dealing with education. You mentioned child care and protection. What is the Ministry of Education's relationship with Child Care and Protection Agency, Ministry of Social Protection, and so on? And the reason I'm asking this is because recently we have seen some really horrid things happening to our children. Do you have a relationship between education and those other departments I mentioned, the ministry?
Yes, we've been working assiduously with those, or collaboratively with those agencies. We have our chief schools welfare officer. From time to time, she visits with the officers at child care and vice versa. As a matter of fact, they were on the program yesterday that we presented in Linden, and that is a testimony to the kind of collaboration that we are seeking. But I don't want us to rule out the importance of parents. In the whole gamut of things, because sometimes when issues break out, like for example, children are in the streets and so on, you might see them liming or something. Media people, for example, will say, "What is the Ministry of Education doing about?" This is a very complex issue. One would want to believe that those children, they are hewn from somewhere, that they have someone who's watching over them, because the school system only operates for about 6 hours a day, and then you have 24 hours in a day. What happens to the other 18 hours? Those children, they must be given direction by somebody who brought them into the world, and therefore a question that should also be asked is, where is the father or where is the mother for this child, and why is it that a time is not set? For example, as a parent, if you set a time, for example, at 4:30 you should be in this house, there'll be no reports about children in the street, and then you hear, what is the Ministry of Education doing, and so on. So it's a very complex issue. I'm not saying that we don't have a role and a responsibility. That's why we have truancy campaigns, Operation Shakedown. We visit with parents, we have parent seminars and so on, because we recognize that we have a pivotal role to play in the process. But we still must take into consideration that for 19 hours every day, they spend time with somebody else.
Yes, indeed. And
or 18 hours.
I'm indeed happy that you raised all of that, and I'm glad that these town hall styles. Have you been, in terms of talking about the importance of the involvement of parents, if you can use yesterday as an example, do you find that this is something the parents are willing to, in a sense, subscribe to and are on board with the Ministry of Education?
Well, Malika, it's a process, something that we've started. Clearly, they were parents who understood what we were doing, and of course, some other parents also used the opportunity to vent their feelings about other things other than parenting, and that was a healthy kind of situation. People would have spoken about, they went into the school system and talked about teachers, they talked about what they would like to see in the curriculum and so on. And so I think the conversation was a healthy one. But I think more importantly is what you could do also, because many times when you have these kinds of conversations, you hear what somebody else should do. But I'm saying that we want to get to that point where parents will say, I will be doing A, B, C, D from today. And of course, the Ministry of Education has its responsibility to perform certain functions. And if those functions are not forthcoming, well, then they will have to be addressed in a very systematic and serious fashion.
Finally, before we come off the subject of the town hall, would you say that you have used maybe best practices or a best practice from another country too? Because again, I don't know if I'm just ignorant to this fact, but this is the first time hearing of this for the education sector. Is it the best practice that you're using?
Yes, it is. One man said there's nothing new under the sun. Really. What is here now has been there before. And when you examine the literature and you go on the internet and you do research generally, you find, and that's what smartphones and laptops and so on. It's not just for surfing and having fun, and it's not just for texting and going on Facebook and posting messages. It is about using for research too, and so we do that. And so even as we did the research, we've seen how this kind of behavior would have impacted positively on the education system. In many countries, I could tell you sometimes it degenerates into wherever you have a collectivity of people and they have different views on different issues, you could actually have a situation like that degenerating into some level of confusion. But it is a risk that we're willing to take, because I believe that if we repeatedly engage the public and let them know what it is that we expect of them and hear from them what they expect of us in the delivery of education, I think we will be in a much better place. It has to be a two-way process.
Okay. All right. Viewers, if you're now tuning in, of course, this is Facing the Nation. I explained earlier in the program that we started a little earlier to facilitate another meeting that the CEO has to attend to. Of course, those of you now joining, we're talking about the education sector developments and positive developments and so on, because I think sometimes there's too much exposure on, not that we hide it from the public, but there's too much on negatives, and we're not focusing on what is actually improving or what has actually improved. CEO, another big thing for us in the education sector, and we see it all the time, grade 6, the national grade 6 assessment. At the end of it, when the students, when they would have received their results, we make a big pronouncement. They've either done extremely well, or there's the other half that has done not so well. I know one of the things that I was reading about is that there were some sensitization sessions, I think, hosted in one of the regions, would have been Region 2, earlier this year, to, in a sense, start work to improve the performance of those students at the grade 6 level. Given that that would have happened in January, did you see a result of that for this year, for in the 2017 results of the National Grade 6 assessment?
Well, yes, we had earlier. I was summoned actually to the cabinet, and we looked at what was being produced over the years, and I was asked to prepare a plan of action to move this process forward. Okay. So what happened? We collected a number a number of individuals were asked to come alongside me. Of course, I was very new into the seat as Chief Education Officer, and
you still are to some extent.
I'm you're right.
I'm doing a fabulous job at it, mind you. Yes, viewers, I'm allowed to be biased today. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, very new, and I found it was kind of interesting to know that soon as I ascended into the seat, then I was called, and I remember one person said to me, when you inherit the good, you inherit the bad too. So
yes.
And I was asking a question. I've not been sitting in this seat, and I'm being called now, and so but I did exactly what was required. And we actually prepared a plan of action, and we saw an improvement in every subject area. That's now history. We saw an improvement in mathematics, in particular, that moved from 13% the pass rate to 46,
wow,
which represented a 240-something% increase. But what we don't want, sometimes when we have a good victory, we relax and so on. So
yes.
That's why you would have seen the people in education, they're busy around this time, because we want, sustainability is very important. Mm-hmm. Because we don't want people to say that, it was a fluke and it was a mistake, and maybe children had it easy, and the different things will happen. Some people praise you, and some people find a way to say that this thing is not real. But I believe that as we continue to press in, we could replicate and reproduce those same results, and even better, to show persons that education is on the move in Guyana. I believe it's on the move.
All right. Even before I talk about some of the things, the other things that I have in mind, I'd like to give you an opportunity, because I know there are lots going on in the education sector, especially coming from your department and so on, that I may not be familiar with. Things that you'd like to put in the public domain now. I'd like to talk about some of those improvements and possible projects and so on.
Well, first of all, I must tell you about the Guyana Early Childhood Education Project, referred to as GCEP. It is very important that we have our children given that foundational education at the nursery level. And so that's a big project that we have, sponsored by the World Bank. Our children, our teachers would have been trained, officers would have been trained to deliver early childhood education. Of course, this has a lot to do with literacy and numeracy, the whole concept of phonemic awareness and phonics, and writing and reading and so on, and that happens from nursery right up to grade 1 in the primary school. That's a big one. Technical and vocational education, you would have heard us talking about the green economy and,
Yes.
and how we could actually promote a green economy. So TVET is high on the agenda. We have established a number of pilot projects in different regions, which will give our students in those regions an employability skill, and it goes into the area of tourism, woodworking, different areas, and so that's another big project. Emphasis is also placed on special needs.
Yes.
That's so important. Now there's a clamor now more than ever for us to move in this direction. And if we're going to be a society that is technological, that is advanced in terms of education delivery, we have to take special needs into consideration. So we are looking at the establishment of an autism school in the compound of CPC. There is we're looking also the establishment of a school for the deaf proper. That's already there, and of course we've employed a number of SEN officers to really bring strong leadership to this particular area.
To jump in here for a bit, I'm happy that you talked about bringing strong leadership, because with all of these things coming on board, will you have measures in place or programs in place, I should say, to train the teachers who will have to be looking, especially in the case of special needs students, who will, parents and teachers who would be employed in the school that would focus on special needs?
Yes, Malika, we are seriously looking at how we could train our teachers. In addition to that, also we're trying to source from persons outside of the Ministry of Education. Like I said, it's a partnership. Mm-hmm. For example, we have gone to the school on Vincentian Road that I think they do a lot of teaching in areas of sign languages and so on. We have sponsored people to go to that institution and to learn how to sign so that they could come back into the school system and make an impact. In addition to that, if they have persons that are available to teach, we've also hired some of those people and positioned them strategically in some of the schools where we have those children. So it is something that is very high on the agenda. As a matter of fact, people meet me and say, man, I have a son that has this condition. Sure. What we are doing for he, And so when people stop you on the road and ask you these things, it's not for you to just dismiss them. You have to go and give some thought and see how we could roll out programs to meet the needs of the people, because that's what we are. That's what we do as public servants. We meet the needs of the people.
And I know people will welcome that, especially in the special needs school. I know of an individual who, her son, he is not, I hate this word, but I think this is the medically correct term. It's not that he's retarded. He seems to be slow in learning, and every time she tries to get him in a school or a classes that would address his needs, they say, well, the students we have are way behind. They are seeing it that he doesn't have a problem, when in fact she has had him examined and they're saying that he has a problem in terms of a slow learn. But apparently, if you're not at this stage where you are extremely slow, or again, a retarded person, a retarded individual, they're not making room for you. So the question is, indeed, what is the Ministry of Education going to do for those students who somehow fall in between?
I could tell you up front that one of the things that we are establishing in conjunction with the Cuban government is the diagnostic center at the Siriporta College of Education. That complex is going to be a real kind of unique place. It will go beyond just training teachers in the fields or in the area of academia, and we will actually venture out into other areas. And so the diagnostic center, with the help of the Cuban government, we will actually be sending children to that institution so that initially we could detect what the issue might be before we actually, because what happens sometimes, all the children are placed into school, but there is no real screening. And so sometimes you might find that a child is not performing and you might say slow learner, but the moment you put glasses on the child the child suddenly improves. The moment the child gets an hearing aid. So it meant that the child probably had a deficiency in hearing, a deficiency in sight, and so we conclude that the children, they're not ready, they're not able, and we call them names, sometimes
Yes.
even labeling and so on. But so this center basically will look at the very inception, attempt to diagnose what the issue might be and to treat with that issue or those issues, and have those children strategically placed so that they could enjoy a better education.
All right. I want to talk about, and viewers, don't get me wrong, this is not putting one against the other, but it's always a conversation for us here in Guyana. There is still the issue as to the fact that some people choose private schools over public schools because they believe that their child will learn easier and it's much more comfortable for their children. At this time, especially with the fact that you have so many things coming on stream where you're moving toward improving the education sector, specifically schools, what would you say to people who still strongly believe that, look, the private school is better and nothing is happening really in the public school that, would see my child propelling toward, becoming a productive adult?
Well, like I think everything boils down to choice. If someone wants to have the child or their children go to private school, so be it. If they're favorable towards the public school, well, so be it. But I want to say, and you said not put in, and I want to be very careful here.
Yes.
Right. When we look at the vast, if I could say that, majority of the children. One time I heard this thing that private schools are doing extremely better than public schools and so on. And then when you look at the numbers, for example, the last national grade 6 assessment, you had like 500 and something children from the private schools writing the exam, as against over 15,000
so
in the public setting. And so
not a good
and so when the comparison, it's an unfair comparison. we don't have the luxury, Malika, to put people out of school if they're not performing. We don't have that luxury. We can't say, well, you will need to take the child somewhere else that is most suitable. We don't have that luxury. We don't have that luxury of, if a child might be violent and the child has been demonstrating certain tendencies, to say, look, we don't want you here anymore. We don't have the luxury, and we don't have the luxury of just saying to teachers, don't come back. Because I don't want to call the name of the private school, but I mean, the principal for that school told me personally that I had to let 2 of them go. And so if the teachers are not performing in the private setting, the next day you're knocked off. Right? And that's why I want our teachers to understand that the role that they're playing is so critical. And the job of teaching, it's a noble job. And when people see us, as teachers, the credibility must come to us because we've given it our best shot. I didn't arrive as a CEO. Suddenly, I came through the ranks. I taught in primary school in what we will call a poor socio-economic background area.
Okay.
East La Penitence. Then I taught at St. John's College in the north, which is a little bit more affluent people. Then I became an education cadet, district education officer, regional education officer, principal education officer, assistant chief, deputy chief, and now chief. So I have a fair understanding. I used to teach, and I always tell people that I have a fair understanding as to what teachers go through, but I believe that it is very important that we lift our game and show people what we could do, because I know we have great teachers in this country. Some of them are hidden, some of them they're unsung heroes, but we want to call them out. And sometimes we only recognize people, those people who like create an attraction by doing something adverse, but there are people out there that are doing good things, and sometimes we never call their names. It is something that we will be doing in this dispensation. If people are good at what they do, they must be honored and they must be respected, and we're going in that direction.
Okay, viewers, I have to begin to wrap up my conversation with the CEO. Before I do that, of course, I am taking the liberty now to say that he'll be back sometime soon. We're almost at the end of 2017, so hopefully I can get a chance to invite him again again on Facing the Nation sometime in the beginning of 2018 for us again, because there's lots happening in the education sector, and it's not a one-off. It's not happening now and then, it would stop. So as programs and projects come on board, we'll be able to have him back on to talk about some of those things. So, but what we'll do now, I know before I have to let him go, CEO, I know there are probably some other quick issues that you would want to touch on.
Just one thing. This
Sure.
morning we've just launched our first smart classroom at Insert, Battery Road,
Smart
Kingston.
class.
Smart classroom. The technology is tremendous. We could actually, from the city now, teach schools, and I'm sure no less a person than His Excellency will be happy about this, because every time he speaks, he always talks about closing the gap.
Yes.
In the hinterland regions and what is happening in the hinterland. And the Honorable Minister, of course, she has been a strong advocate of this kind of technology. And so somebody could, at the center in the city, actually teach a classroom in Bartica. We've actually just had the demonstration lessons in Bartica. It's amazing, smart classroom.
Just for the clarity, my own clarity obviously, and the clarity of the public, what is the smart classroom? What is it designed to do? To teach one area from another?
That's right. You could it's virtual now. We could actually interact with students in another part of Guyana in the form of teaching. We could do staff development sessions. We could conduct programs. The children could actually use their smartphones and come in once they get this number of the Zoom room, the meeting. If they have a smartphone, the entire class could actually write on the screen of the smartphone. That comes back to the center. The center could reply and so on. So, for example, let us say a teacher, I know we have to go, let us say a teacher is not, a teacher hasn't reported for duty in a particular area in mathematics, for example. Somebody then sort at the center could actually teach mathematics at that class. That's where we're going.
Well, we're happy to be going there, and now I can boast to my friends in other countries, hey, we're having this. One other quick thing before you leave. You talked about the diagnostic center, the CPC, and so on, and the school that will be there for special needs. Is there and again, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but is there a timeline when these things will be established or when they will come on stream?
Actually, we've just completed we've just identified the names of the persons to be trained by the Cubans, and so next year, very early, that will be up and running. The Autistic School, that will take some more time because we still have to work out some issues with the autism schools.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you so much, Chief Education Officer, Mr. Marcel Hutson. Viewers, again, if you missed this conversation, you can catch it on YouTube, my YouTube channel and Facebook pages. Before the end of the weekend. And Mr. Hutson, thank you so very much for taking time off and coming again.
Thank you, Malika.
All right, great. Viewers, this is Facing the Nation. We'll take a quick break and come back and we'll deal with the other half of today's program. Stay tuned. Thank you very much for staying with Facing the Nation. Again, for those of you who are now joining and you're wondering what's happening, yes, we started Facing the Nation a little earlier today, again, because we have so much happening in this city. The traffic is built up, traffic is heavy. I really needed to have the Chief Education Officer on today's program. That would have been Mr. Marcel Hutson, but he has, as you know, this is graduation season also, and he has to attend a graduation at 1 o'clock with His Excellency the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and of course, you know, the Chief Education Officer cannot be late for that. So we're so grateful that our television station would have accommodated us to bring us on earlier so that we can get that conversation with Mr. Marcel Hutson on. But you